I'm going to tell the story about my conversion disorder patient. So I'm rounding at the hospital, and I have a girl who I'm taking over for my partner, and he signs out a girl to me that comes in with seizures, quote unquote, and these seizures are like these hip thrusting motions that she goes through and these other things where she passes out and body shakes and everything. And so, okay, cool. Something's off. She's a young girl, no other medical issues. I don't know if she has any history of like physical trauma or sexual trauma, but if I was going to put money on it, I would say for sure she does. And they did an EEG during one of her episodes where she was having the thrusting motions and the EEG was negative for seizure activity. So perfect. We got it. We caught the behavior. We were able to catch it on EEG for those 20 minutes, and we can rule out reliably that this is not a seizure disorder. Awesome. So then I go into the room that day, and she's had an MRI brain. That's come back normal too. And next, so she's lying in the hospital bed. Next to her is her father on one side and her best friend on the other side. Awesome. Now I've got social network covered too. Strong social support. We have a solid diagnosis. So now I can move in with the rest of the conversation. And I tell her, listen, we did an MRI. MRI is normal. We did an EEG during one of your episodes yesterday. There was no seizure activity. And it's just silence in the room. And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, we did an EEG yesterday and there was no seizure activity. And I start to see the pieces moving. And she asked me, I think once or twice again, and I'm explaining it sort of in different ways every time, but I don't say that you don't have seizures. I just keep repeating the data. And then she starts to click together and she's like, wait, so the things I'm having are not seizures? And I'm just like, yes, correct, exactly. And I don't beat around the bush. I just admit it. And then she starts to sort of get into one of her spells, and she's starting to black out. She's not blacking out. It's her eyes sort of roll back, and she's doing a little bit of shaking, and she's getting into a routine, and then she's out. She's unresponsive, but she's there. I know she's there. And luckily, her dad and her best friend have seen this before, so they're not overreacting. Perfect. So I just keep rolling with it and keep talking to her as if she's still in the room. I'm talking to her friend. I'm talking to her dad, and I'm saying, no, she's safe. She's okay. She's in a safe place. Yeah, we'll just keep an eye on her, and we'll wait till see how she's doing. But yeah, so let me keep talking to you guys about the condition. And so as I continue to talk, she wakes up. And this is much earlier than she's ever, right? Normally she'd be out for a while before she comes back to. But she comes back to, she joins the conversation again, and we continue talking. And of course, it's extremely stressful for her. She's crying. She's crying, but her friend's really supportive, getting in with her and saying, hey, listen, we're here for you. And they're great. So this was a situation where stress is so powerful, and the individual has such a bad coping mechanism for stress that instead of being able to channel it and box it up and then kind of deconstruct it later on, or whatever people do, right? Like people do different things for stress. She couldn't do it for herself. And she decompensated by having a seizure, which is not really a seizure, and we don't like to call it that. But I'll talk about that some other time. So for a moment, let's say that stress is everything. Stress is always present. Stress never goes away. Stress is inherent to who we are as human beings. Then what if stress was what was important to you? So if everything causes stress and everything is stressful, then you're always going to be stressed, and you focus your stress on what matters to you. And that's a natural evolutionary response either to the existence of stress, or we created stress because it helps drives us forward. Whatever it is, stress will focus on what matters. Stress causes pain, and that we can all agree on. Stress will come no matter what you do because it's who we are. Stress will cause pain, but the question becomes, how does it cause pain? Is it pain of your choosing, or is it pain that is going to be thrown upon you? And data has shown that people who experience stress of their choosing come out stronger and better, with better kind of lifestyle and happiness criteria and physical health. They all kind of come out of it stronger, may make more money because of the stresses that they choose, right? So going to medical school is incredibly stressful. Going through residency is beyond stressful. But the point is that you come out of it better. But if it's a stress that's thrown upon you that had no control with, for example, the stress of sexual abuse, the stress of physical trauma where somebody beat you up, they mugged you and they took your money, right? That was stressful, and that is PTSD inducing, and that's rough. And that makes you weaker. That takes you away from society. That makes you more withdrawn. You feel less confident in yourself. Those stresses are bad stresses. So if we were to make a broad generalization and say the stress of something you choose is good and the stress of something that's thrown upon you is bad, then every time you're facing a stressful situation, you should take the route where it's your choice. So you can choose to exercise and have the stress of exercise and the unhappiness of exercise, or you can choose to not deal with that, but eventually you'll be facing the stress of cardiovascular disease and the stress of guilt, the stress of judgment, whatever is here, where if you take the route that you are happy with yourself with, you face the stresses head on. It's like diving into that wave rather than letting it crash into you. If we're talking health, again, diet. So the stress of not eating the foods you want to eat, you don't think it's stressful for the healthy guy to not eat that donut? It's incredibly stressful, right? Like every day at work, there's cookies and donuts and there's everything, and it's so good, and you want more of it because it's fucking amazing. It's sugar. It's so good, but it's stressful to not eat those things. Versus the other side of stress, where it catches up with you and causes the issues, and again, it's like part of it is vanity, part of it is physical health, part of it is just how good you feel about yourself. So all of that matters. That's fine. You can be a overweight person and be confident about yourself and be happy with who you are. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that's a choice. And if you're happy with your choice, then more power to you. Cool. Moving on is, which stress do you choose? Healthy stress or the less healthy stress? We talked about that. So I think that there are a lot of diseases that teeter on this spectrum. It's not just happiness and unhappiness, but I think there's actual illnesses that teeter on this stress spectrum. So stress is an interesting mechanism. We need it. We live it. We all thrive by stress. You can't exist without stress. The question is, how do you get rid of your stress? And we can talk about that some other time.